Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk going live on this Tuesday night. Gonna have a big time. Hey, let's talk about growing trophy bass. So, had some pretty interesting things happen here lately, which I always do. It's when people ask me, how are you doing? I tell them, truly, and I mean it, I'm still leading a pretty cool life. And I am. Just hung up the phone with Tom Lang here just about 1 second ago. And so, and I'm looking at what he just messaged me. So, anyway, I want to talk to you guys about some of the top secrets of growing trophy fish. Because, you guys that all listen to this show or watch me and have talked to me before know that I've got 5 fundamental principles. You know that. Happy water. If you don't have happy water, nothing else matters. Habitat. As goes the habitat, so goes what lives in it. If you don't have the best habitat for all the different species of fish, they're not going to thrive. Food chain. You got to have food. It takes 10 pounds of bait fish to grow a pound of game fish. Up to a point. Then it takes more than that. So you got to have the right kind of food. I'm going to turn this thing off because it's going to... Whoops, looks like Danny Mac's in. Oops, somebody's trying to Skype me. I have no idea what that is. So then the next piece is the right kind of genetics. And the final piece is a harvest plan. Now the harvest plan may end up being the most important part of your efforts to grow some really trophy fish. I want to take you through some of that. Let's see here. I want to see how many people we got watching before I dig in very deep, and I can't tell. So, I'm looking at this here, and I have no idea who's watching. So, hey, check in with me a little bit so I can see who's watching this tonight, so I kind of know what direction to go. So, anyway, hey, you know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like, share this to your timeline, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. And I think we've only got like 6 people eligible for the drawing right now, so we're not going to do it yet until we get more people to jump in there. Now, most of the time I can see comments, hey, Danny Mac, I know you're watching, but something's going on where I can't really see it, and I don't know what it is. So you guys kind of chime in and let me know that you're there, because I'm not sure I can see comments right now. So anyway, I'm going to start talking about this stuff and see where this goes. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this. I am my own producer, and I don't know how to do it, so. All right, well, if I can see your comments, I'll let you know, but right now I'm not seeing any. Insights. No, it's not telling me much. Dashboard. Uh-oh. Don't want to do that. Cancel. Pond Boss is live now. Cancel. Now I can't see anything. That was really, really smart on my part. Attaboy Lusk. Huh. Maybe I can come back to it. Oh boy. Maybe I can look at it on my phone. Oh, there I am on my phone. I can see that. Oh, there's Dave Weber. 13 watching, Danny Mac, David Schneiderman, Ryan Hull. Okay, so I can see you guys on my phone, but I can't see you on my computer, which is weird. So anyway, please bear with me a minute. I don't know what I've done. Well, you know what? I'm just going to look here at this camera and just talk to you guys and look at the comments on my phone. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to kill the noise here. There's Katie Burke. Hey, Katie. I just hung up from Tom about 2 minutes ago. Good to see you. Jason Foley. Good to see you. Hey, Wayne. I see Wayne's on here. Good. Bradley Metzner. Hey, Brad, good to see you, buddy. Good to see you going on. I have to look here at my dadgum phone to be able to see this. I have no idea what I did, but I butchered it up somehow. Maybe I can click on this right here and go to it. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to talk about this stuff and just try to look at, get a hammer, smack it. Steve Martin. I like the way you think, man. You think like I do. Get a hammer and just smack it, and that'll fix it. Hey, I see Fred Bingaman on there. Good. All right, good. That helps. That helps. So I'm going to keep it going, and I'm just going to talk to you guys. So, all right, so we had the latest Institute of Higher Pondology last weekend at West Haven Ranch and had a blast. We had 10 guys there along with Bobby West and Jacob West. Mike Otto came. Steve Parks showed up. They call him Big O. Steve Parks he's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He's a fascinating guy. He's a 10th degree black belt. And he kind of downplays that, which I don't know how you can downplay being a 10th degree black belt. But what he's most famous for is he owns Rage Tail Baits. So he's the guy that has invented and patented and created and marketed Rage Tail Baits. And he markets most of them through Strike King. You know, so he was there and spent some good time with us. But what was really fun is we had a couple of young guys still in college, 2 right out of college. We had 2 that were probably in their mid-30s and a couple in their 40s and a couple of guys like me in their 60s. And we were able to go collect some really good data. I was able to present. My approach to teaching is like this. I want to hit the principles and the theories and then give some examples of how those things work in the real world, which my world is the real world, of getting out there and working on lakes and ponds and getting sunburned and, you know, mud under your toenails. And then when you go get a pedicure, they have to dig it out. I didn't really say that. Hey, Jim Nordquist, Dave Weber, spit in the back of it and whump it. That sounded like something my mama would have said. And so, and then go out and actually get in a boat or grab a net or get some water and go do it. So these guys were really fired up about it. It was so much fun watching. And we all got to cook together and eat together and just, you know, ask a bunch of questions together. And we weighed and measured probably 80 or 90 largemouth bass. And we collected several hundred bluegills and red ear sunfish. They did water chemistry, checked the water temperature, looked at the visibility, and they really got to see all these principles coming into play and how they all come together. So it was really a lot of fun. It was really educational. And from, you know, being the guy that puts it on, I just absolutely love watching. You can just watch everybody's eyes, and you can see, I got it. You know, the light bulb's kind of turning on. So it's so much fun to do that. Now I'm sitting here trying to see if there's any questions. Yeah, you guys hit me with some questions. I'm going to try to answer them. Last thing I see is Jim Nordquist. Hey, Bob. So, anyway, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is about how to grow some truly giant fish. Everybody knows that the water's got to be healthy. We all know that. We all know that you got to have the right kind of habitat. We know that. You have the right food chain. We know that. You got to have the right genetics. If you don't have the right genetics, nothing's going to grow. We all know that. But what we don't know is what does all that mean? So we got to talk about that and figure that out and see exactly how that works. Holy cow, this shows that I have been, that's 31 minutes. No, 31 minutes. No chance I've been on here 31 minutes. That's weird. So, I'm so distracted. I'm trying to figure this out, guys. It's driving me nuts. Trying to go to the home page. Nope, they won't do that. Okay, well, I flunked tonight, but I'm going to keep going. So, what's really, really interesting to me about trying to grow trophy fish is it's way, way deeper than just trying to figure out if you got the right food chain or if you stock the right genetics. Here's something that I think is helpful to you guys. And I've said this over and over and over, and I think I've said it on this show maybe 20 times. But just because you have the best genetics doesn't mean you have the best recipe to grow the best fish. Now, hey, there's John Wilson. Okay, all right, there we go. Good. Okay, I'm seeing it I'm having a look on my phone. That's what I'm doing. So, talking about big fish. Hello, John Dyer. Good to see you popping in there. So, it's not just enough. It's not enough just to have happy water and great habitat in the food chain or genetics. There's way more to it, and that's where the harvest plan comes in. As we were analyzing these fish last weekend, one of the young guys that was there, Jonathan Goodman, who's a freshman at Baylor University, and he hails from Southern California, and he and his family own some property near Glen Rose, Texas, with a pond on it. And one of the things he was wanting to do is learn how to really grow big fish. And he made a comment to me. He says, "You guys, do you know that video where the guy lays on his belly and a kind of a farmer rancher looking guy, and he catches a bass with his hands?" I said, yeah, I know that video. He said, so hello, Jeremy Day. Good to see you, my friend. He said, how does he grow those fish so big? So I said, you want to know? Let's call him. I've got his number. So we called him. We called Earl Woodard and talked to him for about 20 minutes. And he'd said some things that really struck me. I've talked to him probably 10 times before because I'm fascinated with that guy. And he started telling me, he says, and he's from Alabama, and he's got that Alabama drawl, and I just love the guy. And he wasn't feeling too good because he had fallen and hurt his knees and I think messed up his wrist, so he was recovering from a fall. And so as we started talking to him, he says, well, I look at big bass like I look at Angus bulls. Well, that was kind of news to me, which I haven't heard him say that. And he says, when you're looking at, when you're a rancher like I am, and you're looking at animals, livestock, you judge them based on their body conformation, how well they gain, how big they are, what kind of offspring they produce. So he has approached raising trophy fish just like he's approached with getting the best bulls for the herd that he's producing beef with. Well, I thought that was a pretty good parallel, so I kept listening to him. So what basically he does with his bass is he is selectively harvesting those fish. Now, everybody knows that by about year 3 that you're going to be culling some bass. We all know that. But what we don't really know is, do we cull them all? Or do we study each individual fish? So at the West Haven Ranch last weekend, part of the mission I wanted to accomplish was to teach the guys about a mark recapture plan. So we tagged almost 50 bass on Friday, and we released every one of them. Although some of them were like at 75 or 85% relative weights, which means that even at 3 years old, they were underweight. Now I'm going to lay a little groundwork here for you. This will make more sense to you. This lake, the West they built it themselves. They spent probably 6 or 7 years doing the dirt work before they ever closed the valve on it. And I think they closed the valve in year 8. And they did it when they had time with their equipment, and they did all of it themselves, did all the habitat themselves. So when they closed the valve to fill the lake, it took it about a year or so to get enough water to stock bait fish in it. So we stocked, and I had them overstock bluegill, red ear, and fathead minnows, knowing that one of their missions is to grow trophy bass, and not knowing how long it would take for the lake to fill up. Somebody else make a comment so I can make sure that this thread is moving. There we go, Dave Weber. Okay, I got it. All right, Dave, I'll hit that here in a minute. Yep, okay, I got it. Good. I'm glad y'all are doing that. Thanks. So I'll tackle that one here in a minute, Dave. So the lake was about 8-9 acres, and we stocked 2,000 bluegill per acre, 500 red ear per acre, and 25 pounds of fathead minnows per acre for the size the lake was at that point. And then we waited a year, and we stocked largemouth bass, and I overstocked them at 200 per acre. Now, here was my theory. If you stock 200 bass per acre, then half of those are boys. you can throw those in the trash because they're not going to get very big. The other half are girls. Well, over decades of doing this, I have figured out that 20 to 25%, maybe 30% of those remaining females are going to have the propensity, the aggressive nature, and the plasticity for that body of water to have the potential to reach great sizes. So when you start thinking about that, that's 20 to 30 bass per acre. They're going to have the very, very best potential. Well, if you can grow 75 to 100 pounds of bass per acre, which you can do if it's managed well, then you're going to have a shot at growing more fish, bigger, faster. So that should make pretty good sense, because that's kind of a math equation. And then the thing is that then about 8 or 10 weeks ago, they had some torrential rains. The lake rose 11 feet and went from 8 or 9 acres all the way up to 20 acres. And now it's full, and it's just tipping over the spillways. It's spilled over the spillway mildly 2 times. So now the lake is at full pool, and those fish are getting ready to really, really grow fast. So as we went out and electrofish, we collected, I think, 48 bass the first day and tagged all those, most of them, tagged 45 of them, I think. We wrote down the lengths and weights and then released all those fish. And some of them were 90 to 105% relative weights. Some were not. And the ones that weren't, we were trying to figure out why not. And part of the reason is because for 8 or 9 acres, they were starting to get a little crowded. But now the lake is 20 acres, and they're not crowded at all. We also found 5 size classes of bluegill. Plus the lake had a little bit of a plankton bloom to it. Visibility was a little over 30 inches, but you could look down in the water and you could see some pretty good brown colored stuff swimming around in it. So there's some zooplankton that's feeding on the nutrients that came into that lake. So now we got all the pieces of the puzzle, plus they created the very, very best habitat. I bet you they spent 2 years. Hey, Patrick, what are you doing, buddy? East Java, Indonesia. I was fishing on the river with Patrick's good buddy and my new friend, Ben Tabor, whose daddy I went to high school with, small world, on the river today, the Brazos River, and we had so much fun and saw some good fish, chasing minnows, and we thought we'd just torment Patrick a little bit, so we FaceTimed him about bedtime in Indonesia, and I guess you're probably about time to wake up, so I guess you had a good night's sleep. Cabernet Sauvignon. And so anyway, as we got looking at these fish, I put them into a spreadsheet. And if any of you guys want that spreadsheet, email me at info@pondboss.com and say, hey, Bob, send me the spreadsheet. Well, as we looked, sure enough, there's a fraction of those fish that are really excelling. Then there's another batch behind them that are average or above average, and then there's the rest of the fish that are well below average. And also we found a whole bunch of 1 to 3 inch bass, so the spawns have been good. Plus, another little fact, we saw several nests with bass on it spawning right now, which is late. They don't need to be spawning May 31st to June 1st, but they are. I attribute that to an 11-foot rise in the lake. So now, what do you do? What do you do to grow those trophy fish? Well, here's what Earl Woodard does. He handpicks the very, very best of the best. And he's got bass in a fairly small lake that are 16 to 18 pounds over there in Alabama. So he looks at those bass just like he looks at a prime Angus bull. He's looking at body conformation, body depth. So that's where the selective harvest part comes in. Now, here's another piece that you guys need to know, and then I'm going to start answering these questions. Hello, Deborah Corlew. Jeremy Day, good news. Okay, I want to read that here in a minute. So where I'm going is that if you got happy water and the best habitat like the West family does, they've got the best habitat, and a food chain that's more than adequate. One thing we figured out in that lake is there's several open niches. So we ordered some threadfin shad. And those threadfin shad are going to make a difference in that lake. And the right genetics, then really, really to grow the best fish, one of the top secrets that people don't really understand is the proper harvest program. And it's not enough to say, hey, we need to cull bass from 13 to 15 inches long. You need to cull bass that aren't performing in that environment as you want them to. And the best way to judge that is to see which bass are thriving, or it could be walleye, it could be smallmouth, it could be tiger muskies, but which fish are performing best in that environment. And those are the ones you want to protect and feed and be sure that they've got everything that they need, and then their growth rate is going to just blow you away. Now, we didn't shock up any 6 or 7 pound bass in that 3-year-old fishery, but I know there's some in there. We found some that were 3 to 4.5, almost 5 pounds. But I know, just looking at the numbers and the ratios, there's got to be a few bass that have already started pushing beyond 7 pounds, and they're only 3 years old. So one of the big top secrets of growing trophy bass that most people really don't understand is how to selectively harvest. You know what most biologists will tell you is that by year number 3 that your bass are going to be getting to the point where they're reproducing and you need to harvest every bass under 15 inches. Well, that's probably not the case. You may want to harvest a few that are 16 or 17 if they're grossly underweight. So the decision that we made over the weekend at the Institute of Higher Pondology, which is another one's coming up in October, I think October 24. I'll tell you more about it here in a few days. But the decision was made if a fish was 15 inches or smaller and was under 90% relative weight, it was coming out. And we had fish tacos Saturday night. They were really good. All right, there's a little tidbit that's a top secret about growing trophy bass. What makes it a top secret? It's not that anybody's hiding anything from anybody. It's just that nobody really knows that. So you hear about selective harvest. You hear biologists talk about selective harvest. But what you don't hear them tell you is what that really means. What that means is you protect the very best of the best, but you got to know what that is. In your lake, which ones are the best of the best? It's not enough. If you're looking at a fish and you're thinking, should I harvest this fish or not? You probably should. You probably should. But if you look at it and you see the shape of the body, the depth of the body, the broadness of the shoulders, then you look at that and say, you know what, this fish deserves to be here. Then you put it back. All right, Dave Weber, let me see here. I'm going to read this off my phone. Most of the ponds that I visited last week in northeast Kansas, northwest Missouri have major vegetation issues. Yep, I can see that. Filamentous algae, lotus, coontail, curlyleaf, our Pheasants Forever chapter had a free kids fishing event last Saturday at a local 12-acre private lake. That body of water had approximately 3 feet visibility and 0 vegetation issues. The only thing I saw different about that lake was a lot of limestone rock in the water and all around the lake shore and some below the water line. Cause and effect or no correlation? Cause and effect. So what happens when you have limestone, you're getting an increase in alkalinity. So when that limestone dissolves into the water at whatever rate it does, what that does is adds the building blocks that plankton need to be able to create the best bloom. So everybody knows that bones are made out of lime. That's what they're made out of. Calcium carbonate. That's what limestone is. So what happens is when you've got that much limestone dissolving into the water, that adds to the alkalinity, which gives the building blocks to allow nitrogen and phosphorus with a little bit of potash, which doesn't need much, potassium, to set the stage to grow those living things such as phytoplankton, which feeds zooplankton. So that is cause and effect. So that's because if you didn't have that limestone, if it was granite rock, you wouldn't see that plankton bloom. And what the effect of that is when you have a plankton bloom, it's effectively blocking the sunlight off of the bottom of the water. Remember earlier I said everything's triggered by temperature? Nod your heads. Oh, y'all killing me. You're all nodding your heads. That's pretty funny. And so what that does is it creates, it allows, it benefits the plankton bloom, which helps shade the sunlight off the bottom of the pond, helping effectively to prevent the vegetation from growing. So that's a big part of it. Plus, it helps build the food chain. So when you've got that limestone like that, and you've got a good plankton bloom, That's the base of the food chain. So that plankton bloom does two things. It prevents sunlight penetration from the bottom to keep the plants from getting out of hand. And the second thing is it's the basis of the food chain. So that lake is going to be more productive than a lake that doesn't have limestone. All right, let's see here what Jeremy Day says. I'm talking a whole lot. My throat's getting scratchy. I better lubricate it. Pretty good lubricant. Good news. After 2 weeks of feeding, no big fish coming to feed. Did see a few small, looks like mudcats, probably 6 inches or so. Given the size of my pond, I think I should be able to stock soon. Thoughts? Waiting on a water sample from Texas A&M to see how to clear it before buying fish. Good plan? Okay, let me tell you about Jeremy. Jeremy worked a deal out with an earth mover who needed some select fill. So this dirt guy dug him a lake, basically. So they've kept it empty, but then here it is, they're done with it. Jeremy got some of his habitat done, but there was a puddle of water down there, maybe covered half an acre. So my recommendation to him, back before all these rains hit, he's around Houston, Magnolia area, before all those rains hit, was to see if he could set up a feeder and see if any fish would come to it. Then he could decide whether or not he needed to take out that fishery. So now the question is, looks like I do have a few mudcats. Okay, they're going to reproduce like little underwater rabbits. So I don't think you need to wait. I think you need to go ahead and get some bluegill and fathead minnows and get those things establishing before those bullheads get a chance to start establishing. So give me a call. I'm going to help you figure that out. We can see if we can get you some fish at a reasonable price. I've got some referrals I can make for you. But I think I'd go ahead and do that. Your water's not going to be toxic at all. Not with the situation you've got. You may want to amend the water to clear it up, but bluegill, fathead minnows don't have to have clear water. They're going to thrive anyway. So let's you and I talk about that and see if we can't go ahead and get you some fish and get you started. And also have A&M copy me on the results on your water test, Jeremy, so I can see. Jim Norquist, what's your thoughts on fish food amounts as the weather gets hotter as summer comes on? Strip ponds in Illinois. Jim, I think in Illinois, your mined ponds, I don't think the fish are going to slow down very much. So here's the way I tell people about feeding fish. Feed them till they don't eat as much. Now, in Illinois, even in strip mine pits, coal pits, or whatever they are, gravel pits, I don't want you to overfeed the fish. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Feed up to 3 or 4 pounds per surface acre per day if they consume it within 2 minutes. Because if they consume it within 2 minutes, then you know you're not overfeeding them. If they consume it all in 5 minutes, you might be overfeeding a little bit. But if they'll eat all that feed within 2 minutes, feed it to them. Now, where I live in Texas, heck, the water gets into the 90s. When it gets that hot, they slow way, way, way down. They're not nearly as active in that mega hot water. So, that's what I'm going to tell you. In Illinois, you've got cooler nights, and you're able to feed for a longer period of time than we are here in the southwest. Christy Harris, hey Bob, curious about your take on hybrid crappie. Could they be put in take or just asking for problems? 1 acre pond in northwest Missouri. Okay, and Justin Ludwig says there's lots of good crappie discussion on the Pond Boss forum. I own the forum and I don't look at it very much, so I don't know what they're talking about lately. So here's my take on that, Christy. Hybrid crappie, even though they're hybrids, they still reproduce. So that's one of the hickeys that the hatchery guys that have developed them over there around Lone Oak, Arkansas are trying to overcome. You know, how can they produce those fish where they don't reproduce? Because they do. And so they're trying to figure that out, haven't gotten there. So now here's the good news, is a 1 acre pond in northwest Missouri, if you did stock crappie and pour some fathead minnows and golden shiners to them, you can grow some pretty good crappie. Now you kind of got to catch 22. If you can grow 20 or 30 pounds of crappie, harvestable crappie every year, you've done good. So what that means is you can have 5 meals a year. Because I don't know anybody that grows crappie that don't want to eat them. Everybody wants to eat them. So you're not going to get a whole lot of production. Not many people grow crappie because they're good sport fish. They grow them because they're flaky white meat that tastes good with coleslaw on a corn tortilla and a little bit of cocktail sauce. So here's the other upside to that. In a 1 acre pond, if you're growing crappie and you get 5 or 6 years down the road and you end up with a whole bunch of little carbon copies about so big, you can rote none and start over. It's easy to start over. All right, Jeremy, you got another question. Best way to add trees and tree stumps for habitat with the lake full? Thinking of floating them and then moving them with a little boat and zip tying them to each other and maybe a road tied to a cinder block. Yep, that's good. Yeah, they'll waterlog. So I do that. I've done that a lot. Where you can take whatever structure you want and tow it out to where you want it and then tether it just like you're anchoring a boat. Tether it to a concrete block. It'll work. Now, be sure you have enough line that the trees can't float away and pull your anchor around. But if they can float around a little bit, they'll get waterlogged and they will sink. Eventually, how long does it take? How long does that even take? Not that long. Doesn't take that long at all. There's no secrets. Wish the lake hadn't filled so dang fast, said nobody ever, except you. So, yeah, that's a good plan. If you can tow them out there, and tether them to a nylon cord, or I like even better tethering them to something that can decompose, like a cotton rope, or even getting some hemp string, or a hemp rope. That hemp rope will break down after 6 months, and you don't hang up on it when you're fishing. Quite as bad. All right. Mike Cottrell, sure you've seen on the news that Rockwall Dam looking like it may give way or not. Makes me think how you emphasize have a good dirt guy. You know what, Mike? I'm so glad you brought that up. I want to address that. So it's been all over the local news here in Dallas-Fort Worth about a dam that was built. The backside slope is sloughing off, and they're afraid that the dam is going to collapse. Well, I'm going to tell you how that works. If it was built right, and it looks like to me that it was, watching on the news. I mean, I can't offer an opinion without going to look at it. But when a dam is built properly, and what Mike is talking about is this dam, the backside slope, the soils are saturated to the point that they're sliding down the backside slope of the dam. Well, there's a bunch of houses downstream, so their fear is that the dam is going to fail and those houses are going to flood. So everybody's on point to, when the dam collapses, they're going to have every bit of 20 minutes to get out of there before the water does what water does. Because when a dam fails, it fails fast. I've seen it. So I can't see how that dam is going to fail, because here's the way dams are built. They scrape the topsoil off the footprint of the dam. Then they build a core trench, which may be anywhere from 2 feet to 25 feet deep. Then they come back and they compact that with compactable clay. So they're building a foundation on which that dam will sit, because it's going to be heavy, right? Well, not all soil is good soil for a dam. So they take some of that soil that's not good, that's not compactable soil, like topsoil or sandy soil, and they'll go set it aside. Then they'll build the dam up with clay, compacting it in 6-inch lifts. So they'll put 6 inches of clay and then compact it with a sheep's foot roller or whatever, like a scraper, and they'll pack it down really, really tight. Then they'll do the next lift. Then they'll do the next lift. And by the time they get finished, they pretty much have a clay-based dam coming up in the middle. Well, when they finish the dam, they got to do something with all that extra dirt. It goes on the backside slope. So all that dirt that's not good dirt for the dirt guy, they'll build the backside slope. And looking at that slope, it's at least a 5-to-1 slope, which isn't steep. But when they use the soils that aren't compactable, those soils can be liable to slough. And it sure looks like that's what's happening with that dam. So it's the core of the dam is probably fine. And they could have an engineering firm out there do some core samples into that dam and find out if it's going to collapse. That's what they should do. And to make sure everybody rests assured that it's not going to collapse, because it doesn't look like it is to me. But what's going on is the backside slope is so wet that it's sliding off and sloughing off of the clay. If it didn't have a clay base, it wouldn't be sloughing like that. So, there's your tip from a fisheries biologist. So, let's see. John Arson, I have several small dead tulip poplars around my 2-acre pond. It's about 10.5 feet deep. Will they have bad tannins that will hurt the lake if I drop them into it? No, they're not. That's not going to be a problem. Now, anytime tannins are a problem, quote unquote, it's because you don't have enough buffering capacity in your water. So it tracks back to that very first most important principle of pond management, happy water. Happy water has an alkalinity at least 40 parts per million, up to a couple of hundred. If it has more than that, that's okay. It's just hard to create a good plankton bloom when you have a high alkalinity. So I'm saying that kind of fast because I don't really want to explain that at this moment. But where I'm going is that as long as you've got alkalinity from 40 up, 40 parts per million up, they're going to buffer the tannin. So in other words, alkalinity is your pond's Rolaids. It's the Tums. You know, it's the way that the water buffers any tannic acids or any other acids for that matter. So as long as you've got that, that's going to work just fine. Okay, Bradley Mester, we finally got to break ground on your small bait pond project. Good deal. What would be your go-to aeration diffuser for a pond less than 1/4 of an acre? You know what? I would go to the Pond Boss Resource Guide and look at those different vendors. We've got Casco, we've got Outdoor Water Solutions. Matter of fact, you know what? Outdoor Water Solutions would be a good one. And we've got Vertex. We've got 3 or 4 different vendors. Here's what I would do. Contact all of them, tell them what you're doing, and then let them come back to you with their recommendations, and then look at them and see which one suits you the most. And if you want to talk about that with me, call me or text me. I mean, dude, you and I are friends, so I can happily help you with that. But the due diligence you need to do is contact those different companies. And wind-driven aeration, where you are in Missouri, might be a pretty good choice. It might be the most economical one. Jeff Wallen, how fast is a lake shallow from sedimentation? How much rain you get? The way that lakes go shallow from sedimentation are based on water flow from runoff and land management practices upstream. So if you're next to a farm and it rains right after they planted, or just before they did the no-till drill or plowed the land, you're going to get more siltation. So it really kind of depends. It depends on that situation. Depends on, like for example, I helped design a lake in northeastern Missouri with an erosion control specialist. Steve Parisi is his name. He built all kinds of devices because his lake is surrounded by hundreds of acres of cornfields. He actually built 2 or 3 silt basins in the tributaries that feed into his pond, and he's got gables set up with rock that can capture the silt before it ever gets to his lake. And I thought that was pretty smart. I thought it was overkill, and it may be, but he's not going to get a whole lot of siltation coming into his lake. Danny Mack, let's see what Danny Mack's got here. Given overcrowded small crappie, would they make good food for introducing some larger predators? Yeah, you know, what I was talking about a while ago, if and when those crappie overpopulate, you're going to have several choices. One is just to take them all out and start over in 1 acre, that's easy, or you can introduce some larger top-end predators. You know, I don't remember where that lake was, but, you know, you could stock some tiger muskies or some smallmouth bass or some largemouth bass or something with a mouth bigger than the crappie, and they're going to help thin those numbers down. But then, Danny Mac, one thing you got to do is you got to keep in mind that you're still going to have a balancing act to do. You're still going to have to be making sure that after the crappie under control, then what are the predators going to eat? You know, plus some of those predators, like largemouth bass or smallmouth bass, they're going to reproduce. Tiger muskies won't. Now, tiger muskies won't work in San Antonio, but they'll work in Illinois. let's see here. Kenny Sanderson would recommend Sawguy. He in the state of Kansas use them in the, I think that's a good recommendation there, Mark. But the issue about that is where do you get them? Kenny Sanderson may be the only guy on the planet that has any of those. Typically fish hatcheries don't sell those. There's Christy Berg checking in from Logan, Kansas. This is kind of new to me, looking at all this on my phone. So you got several take-home points tonight. One of the biggest ones about raising trophy fish is that selective harvest piece. I got several things to tell you about raising a really huge fish. First of all, the bigger your fish get, the bigger their meals need to be. So when you get a number of largemouth bass, for example, that exceed 6 pounds, they're not going to be chasing 2-inch bluegills. They're going to be eating 10-inch bass or 9-inch gizzard shad or 7-inch threadfin shad, or 6-inch bluegills. So as you're managing for trophy bass, you do want to pay attention to the water quality. Like going back to the aeration thing, the more stable the water is, the less stress that the fish have, and they're not so worried about surviving, is that they can be thriving. So having happy water is still number one. Having the right habitat to support those fish as well as what they eat is number two. And then keep in mind that your bait fish spawn in waves. The bluegill spawn, and depending on where you are, like in Illinois, they may spawn 2 times a year, maybe 3 times a year. But in South Texas, they may spawn 6. But they're going to be in waves. So there's waves coming and going. So trying to fill the gaps when the food chain is low is kind of a tricky deal. Some guys stock rainbow trout in the fall to help the bass make it through the winter. Some people go buy hundreds of pounds of crawfish in the spring while they're waiting for bluegill to reproduce, to help make sure their bass are in good shape going into the spawn. So there's a number of techniques. You can buy minnows. Now, it is not cheap to truly grow trophy fish. But if that's your deal, you can pay a guide $500 to go fishing, or you can pay a hatchery $500 to stock, crawfish in there or something. So the food chain's a big deal, but I do think the most unsung hero of growing huge fish is proper selective harvest. So that's kind of where I want to take you with that. Danny Mac, dang Bob, now I want to put heat pumps on the pond to keep colder water fish. I don't blame you, buddy. All right, Dave Weber, do fathead minnows have a propensity to migrate out of a pond through an overflow pipe during an occasional high water event? They really don't. They like the fathead minnows, so I'm going to kind of qualify this statement a little bit. Fathead minnows are so prolific that even if some of them did escape, that they're going to reproduce and replenish themselves. Now, here's a caveat to that. Is they're slow-moving fish that live in the same habitat as bass and bluegill. So if you've got bass and bluegill, fathead minnows aren't going to last but maybe 2 years after you first stock your predator fish in there. Then they're going to go away. They're going to get eaten. But even if some of them did migrate out, they're so prolific spawners that those that did migrate out during a flood would be replenished in short order. So if you've got a pond and you want to grow some fathead minnows, don't worry about losing very many, because they're, I've used this analogy all the time. You guys have been asked, would you rather have $1 million or a penny doubled every day for 30 days? Pick the penny. Well, fathead minnows are that penny, because they reproduce like crazy, and then the babies start having babies after about 45 to 60 days. John Harrison, we're thinking about adding the F1 tiger bass. Will they do okay in southern Indiana? We're right on the Indiana-Kentucky border. Here's my answer to that. I think they do fine. I think the bigger question is, can you get them in there? You need to find out what the laws are. One thing I am a proponent of is protecting the indigenous species of an area. Like out here in the Brazos River, there's some Harris mud crabs. I haven't seen any yet, but I've been told about it. Those things, if they're there, which they say they're there, then they're dislocating some of the native crawfish, for example. So you want to be smart about that. But to answer your question, will they do okay in southern Indiana? I think they will. And part of the reason is that they don't like cold water. But they do great in Texas. And I'll tell you this, in Texas in January and February, our water is colder here than it is in Indiana because you guys have a layer of ice. And so that ice is protecting the water temperature from making a drastic change. Where we get drastic changes, we can go from water temperatures 55 to 35 in 10 days. Whereas when you get that layer of ice early in the season, say you're in Indiana, southern Indiana, you're probably freezing up late December, early January, when then your coldest months are January, February, and you're under the ice. That water's not going to change from 39 or 40 degrees and get a lot colder, except right under the ice. So that's not going to kill those fish. What's going to kill it is what laws you have to live with. So here we are. We're at 7:15. I'm kind of running out of topics for the moment. Oh, let's see. There's Brad Metzner coming back. With the talk of limestone and alkalinity, what is your thoughts on placing a truckload of crushed limestone in the pile in the middle of a pond after it's built? I love that idea because I'll tell you this. Not only, and I know which pond you're talking about, Brad, because I got to go see Brad, several months ago. I guess it was in October. It was in October. And so here's my conclusion there. Rock is my all-time favorite habitat for fish. So piling up some rock in the middle of that pond is a good idea. Just make it like a pyramid. And if you want to do 2 or 3 piles and make them smaller, that's even better because that gives you more habitat. And then the limestone is going to dissolve as it needs to into the water. And it will never, ever all dissolve. So, I think it's a great idea there, Brad. John Harson, we are on our 2-acre pond on a 52-acre farm. Our pond doesn't overflow into any watershed. Well, I debate that, but I'm going to take your word for it. Because if it overflows, where does it go? If you have a heavy rain, where does it go? But, my mama told me that when somebody has an opinion, respect it. I'm going to respect that opinion. Dave Weber, think about stocking my new silting pond above my bigger pond with fatheads only and hoping some of them will become kamikaze and flee out on their own. Well, I'll tell you what, here's the way that will work. Some of them will, but the majority won't. And the more dense population you get, that you grow, the more likelihood that some of them are going to escape. But I don't think there's no chance all of them are going to escape. And if you've got plenty of spawning habitat, remember, Dave, that fathead minnows stick their eggs on the underneath sides of firm objects. So as long as you've got that habitat, like what Brad's talking about with limestone, that's perfect habitat, or pallets, whatever, they're going to keep laying eggs. They're going to keep. Now, or should I put a drain valve in the bottom of the pond to occasionally drain them? The chances of them going through a pipe, fathead minnows probably would go through a pipe, but with that silt pond, you got to keep in mind it's going to have silt. And when it has silt, it could plug your pipe. So your pipe probably needs to sit off the bottom. So if it sits off the bottom, the pond's not going to drain. Fathead minnows are easy to seine and they're easy to trap. So you can probably drain some of them out, but I'd hate to hear that you ended up with 50 pounds of dead fathead minnows in the pond because you drained the water off of them and they suffocated. There's Reno. Hey, Reno. John Harson, you're welcome. Colton Ridenauer, managing a public use lake, and I really aren't seeing many fish keeping fish. We have a stunted largemouth bass population around 8 to 9 inches long. Getting ready to put in 9 artificial brush piles. We have done culling while using a shocking boat, but are considering using gill nets for larger cull efforts. I don't have any problem with that at all, if they'll let you. Cull. You didn't say how big the lake is. But it's really hard to get people to eat 8 to 9 inch bass. I mean, an 8-inch bass is about as big as a cigar. Reno. If pumping from a well to fill and maintain a pond, is it better to place the outlet on the bottom, underwater, or above the water level? Above the water level, pouring in, and let that well water splash on something like it can even be corrugated aluminum. But if you can splash that water, I tell you what I would do, Reno. I would buy a load of limestone and let your water dump on top of that limestone. And that way you can add some alkalinity to the water. You're going to be in the Carrizo Aquifer down there around San Antonio. I don't remember the alkalinity of that water, but the objective is when water comes out of the ground, it has zero oxygen in it. So you really need to let it, aerate. So if you let it expose itself to air, then you're gonna be better off. So letting it hit something, splash, break into smaller droplets, that's the way to go. Mark Corser, my great friend from Great Britain via Southern California, except Lexington, Kentucky, on a thoroughbred horse ranch there in Lexington. He gets his fish tomorrow, and you're looking suave, Bob. Hey, I think I told you all that story about a year ago. I love to torment my wife a little bit, just jerk her chains a little bit. So in April last year, she came to me, she says, you need to go get a haircut. Well, she was a little snappy, I didn't like that. So I said, I don't think so. She said, you need a haircut. So I said, I'm going to let it grow out. Really, really thinking, I told you to go get a haircut. But she didn't. She said, have you ever let your hair grow out? Oh, man, I was busted. I said, no. She said, I like that idea. Let's let your hair grow out. So now, I've been to her beauty shop twice, but I refuse to learn about product. Thanks, Mark. So, hey, guys, we're almost past an hour. And I don't know how in the world this thing says I've been on for an hour and 14 minutes, because I haven't. But it is 7:23. It's always fun to hang out with you guys. Hey, Mark, take a few pictures and text them to me when the fish get there. I talked to Sean today, and he was coming back from stocking I think he stocked 50,000 bass into F1 tiger bass into Toledo Bend Reservoir on the border between Louisiana and Texas. So he's headed to your place next. So take some pictures, man, and share them with me, because I still need to write some stories in Pond Boss about your adventure. So, folks, I'm going to wrap it up right here. Hey, don't forget, Pond Boss, I forgot to do my commercials. Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. So be sure and subscribe to Pond Boss if you don't mind. Go to pondboss.com. Some of your resources are this Facebook page and the Pond Boss YouTube page. We got a lot of stuff there. At pondboss.com, we have all kinds of free articles, free videos and stuff, and we're happy to help. The next Institute of Higher Pondology, we just finished the last one. Huge success. $1,500. It's not cheap, but you know what? I'm not cheap. And the stuff I know that you need to know, it's worth it. I promise you. Every one of those people would give you a testimony of what it was worth. But that also buys food. I cook. So, and Bobby West does too. So you get good food, a place to stay, and a super curriculum that's got all the principles, all the theories, real world examples of how those work, and then you get to go out and do it. So it's really pretty cool. So if you want to learn more about pond management and fisheries management, check us out. The next Institute of Higher Pondology is going to be, I think, October 24, 25, 26, through there somewhere. It'll be advertised in the magazine or you can send me an email. So, wait a minute. Colton Ridenhour, 30-acre lake. Oh, yeah, PSD of 20. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay, I see. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so Colton, yeah, I do see where you're going. So if you can harvest some of those fish with gill nets, get at it. So, hey, everybody, I really appreciate you chiming in and joining in tonight. Had to do a little different tonight. Took me a few minutes to kind of figure out how to play, but it looks like it worked. So until next Tuesday night, I don't know where I'll be, but I know I'll be hanging out with you. So until then, adios for now.